Hey, you. Who would you pick for Defensive Player of the Year? Probably someone like this guy.
Oh, Jalen Johnson just got swatted by Victor Wembanyama.
For months, it seemed inevitable. A 7'4" alien with an 8-foot wingspan shutting down everything in sight. I mean, Victor Wembanyama was rewriting how we even define defense. Before his blood clot injury, we were looking at 3.8 blocks per game, 9.2 defensive rebounds per game, 1.1 steals per game, and the 5th highest block rate in NBA history. He had already blocked 74 more shots than any other player this season. He was so ridiculous that people were putting as much as $10,000 just for Wemby to win Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, come on. And this wasn't even that insane, right? I mean...
Breaking news out of the NBA, according to our Shams Charania, Victor Wembanyama, the San Antonio Spurs star, is going to miss the rest of the season.
Crazy because after all that, they took him off the court.
And just like that, the frontrunner for Defensive Player of the Year was out of the race. Naturally, the conversation turned to the usual suspects, centers. Because let's face it, history says that if you're not 6'10 with some ridiculous block rate, you're not winning the award. But what if I told you the best defender in the league this season isn't even 6'7"? Meet Dyson Daniels, also known as the Great Barrier Thief. He's only 21 years old, and he's playing as a guard for the Atlanta Hawks. He's not just having a good defensive season, he's having a historical one. And by the end of the video, you're going to see exactly why Dyson Daniels deserves to be the first guard to win DPOY since Marcus Smart, and why, statistically, he might be having an even better season than Smart ever had. You see, when Dyson Daniels first entered the league in 2022, he wasn't exactly a household name. No viral mixtapes, no Zion level hype, just a guard from Australia. Fast forwarding to 2025, Dyson Daniels has quietly become the single most disruptive defender in the NBA. In terms of steals and deflections, he's blowing everyone else out of the water, averaging 3.06 steals per game and 6.7 deflections per game. In comparison to the other guards this season, the difference between Dyson Daniels and second place is actually greater than the difference between second and ninth place. Deflections reveal a similar narrative, with Dyson Daniels having nearly double that of second place. If Dyson Daniels stays on this pace, he's set to finish with 448 deflections, breaking the all-time single-season record. This record is currently held by Robert Covington with 315 deflections in 2018. Dyson Daniels has actually already shattered this record with 316 deflections as of February. Okay, but now you're probably thinking, but steals and deflections don't tell the whole story. And you're absolutely right. Let's see how much opponents actually struggle to score when Dyson Daniels is guarding them. At a 3.1% field goal differential, this means that players shoot 3.1% worse than their average when he's their primary defender. Here's where things get even crazier. On-off defensive rating measures how much better a team's defense is when a player is on the court. At negative 4.4, this means when Dyson is on the floor, his team allows 4.4 fewer points per 100 possessions compared to when he's off. Since Daniels has joined, the Hawks have gone up a whole 11 places in defensive rating.
I'm getting stronger!
But what does it actually take to become a Defensive Player of the Year as a guard? Since '87, there have only been 3 guards to do it. Michael Jordan, Gary Payton, and Marcus Smart. But what if I told you that this season isn't just better than every guard in the NBA today, but it's also better than Marcus Smart's Defensive Player of the Year season? When we put them side to side, the numbers tell a story that nobody else is talking about. Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year averaging 1.7 steals per game. Dyson Daniels, 3.06. That's an 80% increase. Deflections, same story. 6.7 for Daniels, 4.1 for Smart. That's 63% more defensive disruptions per game. So Marcus Smart won DPOY averaging fewer steals, fewer deflections, a worse defensive rating, and a smaller on-off impact. And somehow Daniels isn't even in the conversation? The big problem is that DPOY has always been a big man award. This year's frontrunner included many big men, including Jaren Jackson Jr., Evan Mobley, and what used to be Rudy Gobert. What voters are used to seeing are these big, flashy blocks. And it's exactly why the DPOY award has been dominated by centers and power forwards for the past 2 decades. But defense is more than blocking. When we look at the numbers, Daniels is getting his hands on nearly twice as many balls per game as JJJ and Mobley. He's not just waiting at the rim for a block, he's out there disrupting every possession. I mean, he has triple their steals and double their deflections. The only defensive categories where he falls short are going to be blocks and rim protection. At the rim, we see Daniels holding opponents to 58.2%, while JJJ holds them to only 53.8% and Mobley at 52.4%. However, in terms of on-off impact, this is where Daniels shines, having the best on-off defensive impact across all the contenders. Of course, Daniels will also be locking down the perimeter, holding opponents at 33.4% shooting, while JJJ holds opponents at 38.2% and Mobley at 37.1%. With elite offensive players, teams can adjust by trapping, doubling, or forcing the ball out of their hands, but with a player like Dyson, his defensive impact extends beyond just his primary matchup. If you try to avoid him, it shortens the court and limits where you can comfortably run actions. If you're overly cautious, you disrupt your offense, drives aren't as clean, ball movement slows, and every pass becomes a risk. Even when teams run plays away from him, he finds a way to disrupt everything, jumping passing lanes, rotating perfectly, and shutting down options before they even develop. Impact goes beyond stats, he forces teams to change the way they play. If the season ended today, one thing is clear. The most dominant defender in the NBA isn't a big man. It's a 21-year-old guard having one of the most disruptive defensive seasons in decades. To break it down, Daniels has the most steals per game, the most deflections per game, having broken the all-time record. He also has the best defensive impact of any guard, a top-tier defensive rating, and has completely transformed a bottom-tier defense. Now that is what a Defensive Player of the Year should really be. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. As always, like and subscribe. This was my first time making a video, so if you have any feedback, just leave it below. Thanks, guys.